Okay, so Saeed, thank you for taking the time to talk to me and the students in MSci 454 today. Can we begin by you telling us about yourself, who you are and what your job is for the university?
My name is Saeed Bagheri. I serve as Tech Transfer Officer for University of Waterloo. We are 4 officers here at the University of Waterloo. I mainly concentrate on commercializing technologies that are coming out from material side, so be it from chemistry or nanotechnology. And I've been also inheriting a lot of life sciences, material technologies that are related to life science applications due to my chemistry background. So I was trained as a chemist and I also have a degree in chemical engineering. I worked in the industry for 7 years before joining the university. And after the industry, I went and did my MBAT, which is Masters in Entrepreneurship and Technology here at Waterloo. And before the program was ended, I had a job offer to join this office. So I left my work in London, Ontario, and I joined the university.
Good,
that was 2007.
A good experience. So can you tell me what the Waterloo Commercialization Office does and why that might be useful to the students who are considering setting up their own business?
Okay. What we do is similar to what technology transfer offices do at other universities. They call them tech transfer office. Here we call them commercialization office. So basically what we do is we receive technology disclosures from inventors, and we review them based on 2 merits: whether it is the IP, the intellectual property, is protectable, and whether there is enough market opportunity to justify our time and the university resources and all that legal cost that we have to. So if the answer to both is yes and yes, then we invite the researchers to get into a formal research agreement with the university where they still own the IP, but they assign the commercialization right to the university through our office. So think of it as you own a house. Once you sign with a realtor, even though it's your house, during that duration of the contract, you cannot sell the house privately, but you have to go through the agent. So we act on behalf of researchers. So we basically help them file the patents. We help them attract more funding to bridge the gap, because once you have shown that something works in the lab, still there are lots of work to be done to get it ready for the market. So we also work in terms of getting the researchers more funding to do that bridge gapping and prototyping and pilot scale up. And but one thing we do best is negotiate on behalf of the researchers. So if it's a license deal, we do all the negotiation, but on behalf of the researchers and the company or the investors that are investing in that startup.
Okay, thank you. So how does the University of Waterloo deal with intellectual property? We're different from most other universities.
Absolutely. So Policy 73, according to Policy 73, inventors own their intellectual property here at the University of Waterloo. The only exception to that is if a researcher is funded by a third party, then we go back to that sponsored research agreement, and basically the IP terms of that agreement gets followed. And that can be anything from the company owning the IP outright, all the way to the company just having an option to negotiate a license. So there's no one contract. Each contract is unique. But if the work is done through fundings that are no strings attached, then the inventors end up owning the IP and not the university.
Okay, and so how does that differ from most universities, and what would they do, and How do you see the strengths and weaknesses of that policy?
So, for example, maybe I can compare Waterloo with Western, or Waterloo with MIT. So at MIT, the institution owns the IP, and then if the IP gets commercialized, the inventors get a third, and the institution gets a third, and then the other third, I believe, gets divided to the office that facilitates in that process. Whereas here in Waterloo, to start with, assuming that the funding is not sponsored funding, so if let's say if it's federal agencies like NSERC or provincial agencies have funded the work, the inventors own the 100% IP. If they choose to go through the university through our office, they disclose the technology, and if we take on the project, then the university takes on a 25% stake in future revenue, and the inventors still take 75, which is the majority. So even though when they go through us, they still have the majority stake in the IP.
Thank you. So the University of Waterloo has a strong record in commercialization. Can you tell me about that? What's our record like?
There are so many things happening in this ecosystem. So the Watco is one, but we also have the Accelerator Center. We have the Communitech, and the entity that works with undergrads on campus, Velocity. So are you asking me on Watco specifically, or the university in general?
The university as a whole, our record of commercializing research.
So I can think of, for example, the FedDev ARC and the FedDev Fellowship, where students, FedDev ARC actually, the researchers would get $60,000 towards their projects. But the FedDev Fellowship was actually most relevant to the students, where through a competitive process, students who had a project which was market relevant, they would put an application through, and they would receive $60,000. Now, one success story that comes to my mind is Thelma Lab. I mean, they managed to raise I believe $14.5 million in venture capital. Now, when I go back maybe a couple of years ago, they received $60,000. That $60,000 allowed them to build and improve their prototypes and get it to the point that venture capitalists were interested in funding more of their work. So it's an ecosystem, one feeding to the other, that makes the system at Waterloo work.
Thank you. And so turning to intellectual property, what advice do you have for students about intellectual property? What should they do to protect their interests?
Okay. First thing, you will have to have done your research in knowing who's out with what. Because a lot of times we receive students who come with a brilliant idea that they think it's very novel, but once we do the prior art search, we find that it has been already done in the past by different firms. So it's very important for them first to do the prior art search and to search the USPTO database to see and verify that what they're working on is unique. Once they do that, then they would have to be careful not to disclose any confidential enabling aspect of their work. Meaning that if they disclose what they're disclosing to someone who's an expert in that field, if that person is capable to reverse engineer what they have done based on the information they provided, then they just have given up um, on the opportunity to file for a patent, because to file for a patent, the three tests that we do, the subject matter has to be novel, has to be novel meaning that it's new, no one else had come up with that idea, has to be enabled, meaning that it's just not an idea that you're thinking, but you've actually proven that the idea works. So whether you have tested it out or built a prototype, or you have to show data that the idea actually works. So that's enablement. And then the third condition is non-obviousness. And that's somehow subjective, because something may not seem obvious to you, but when a patent examiner reviews the application, they basically put one patent in front of another patent, in front of another patent, and then in light of those three patents, they say, well, what you're doing is you're combining those three, so this clearly is obvious. So that's more a subjective argument, but the very first two, the novelty and enablement, is clearly a must that they have done.
Interesting, thank you. And should they be talking to an intellectual property lawyer?
If they think that they're going to pursue the opportunity, then yes. And there are lawyers here in town, again, in the Waterloo entrepreneurship ecosystem, that they would provide the first meeting free of charge, or the first hours free of charge. And then they would charge on an hourly basis. The question is whether they are committed to the project, and whether they see clearly a subject matter that has grounds and has the market size to justify their cost. For the patenting process, there is something called the provisional, in the US, called provisional patent application. And the provisional patent application costs much less than a full formal patent application. So in price range, let's say if a lawyer is drafting a provisional, may charge them $1,000 to $3,000 for a provisional, whereas a full formal patent application may cost anywhere from $10,000 to $17,000, depending on how much time that patent agent. So in this office, we do everything on a stage gate process. So when we receive a disclosure, and when we decide to take on that project, we first file a provisional, because that gives us 12 months to still evaluate the project and to still put some applications for further funding, and to also talk to the industry to see if the industry validates our assessment. So if the answer to all of those is yes, then we put the resources to take it to a full patent application.
Okay, and so could you say a bit more about how you then go on to help the students with the commercial side of their business? What type of services do you provide to them, and why should they come to you?
Yeah, so we regularly receive students. As a matter of fact, my colleague right now next door is talking to a student. So when students are working on their fourth year project, and when they have done their prior art search, and when they think that they have something solid, they can approach our office and seek our advice. Our mandate is to help commercialize inventions from anyone within the University of Waterloo environment, be it a faculty member, be it a postdoc, be it a PhD student, a master's student, or even an undergrad student. And I personally do have projects where undergrad students are co-inventors with faculty members. So that happens all the time. So we don't charge for the students to come and talk to us. and we provide them with all the information that they need to make an assessment and to realize whether partnering with the university is works for them or not. I'll give you a few examples. So let's say if a student has an app or a software, it may not require that much funding to take it to the market. But if a student have created a new formulation or new material, there are so many unknowns that need to be addressed before a company would assess licensing it, or if an investor is willing to invest in a startup, whether it could be scalable, because for you to have synthesized something in the lab is one thing, but whether you can scale up that milligram to kilogram to tonnage, it's a huge gap, and that's where at least my work adds value to the faculty members and researchers that I work with.
Thank you. So do you mentioned funding there a little bit. Do you also help students with accessing funding for their businesses?
So the students, the funding that I've seen helping student projects, it's mainly the FedDev Fellowship funding. And there are certain times there are some grants that are relevant to students that we may help providing them a support letter that in their application when we see that the work they're doing is commercially relevant, that we would provide a support letter. The other aspect is actually a project that we're involved right now with CBET. So I've sponsored one of the projects from our portfolio. It's a zinc air battery portfolio of components for zinc air battery, work of Professor Zhang Chen. So we have a student team that was selected to go and present this business plan at the University of Rice in Houston. So we have helped them cover part of their cost to travel there, and any cash prize that they win, it's theirs to keep, in addition to all the experience that they get from talking to real venture capitalists and how to enhance and improve their business pitch and elevator pitch. So that's how we can help students to build that entrepreneurial spirit and training.
Great. So how do students go about accessing your services? If they're interested, having watched this video, what should they do next?
They should go to the website and identify the tech transfer officer that they want to contact. As I mentioned, we are 4 officers. All of us are engineers. My background is chemical engineering. My colleague Khosrow is an electrical engineer, and Ling Lochner is a software engineer, and Eric Luizato is a civil engineer, but also does a lot of mechanical work. So they should find out whose schedule best suits their technology and just make an appointment and come see us. It's part of our mandate.
Wonderful. So the last question I've got is, have you any final words of advice for the students, Saeed, as they consider whether they're going to go and set up their own business or move into other aspects of a career? Have you any advice that you'd like to pass along to them based on your wide experience?
Life is too short for one to repeat all the mistakes oneself. So when in doubt, always seek other people's advice and mentors. And there's a huge resource of people here in Waterloo ecosystem that can help, especially when we know that it's a student. We tend to go a bit further just to help out the student and their ideas. So if there's an area that you're not certain, seek advice of business mentors and you'd be surprised how much you can get back.
Thank you for talking to me today, Saeed. Good advice, and I'm sure the students will find it helpful.
Thank you for your time.